represent to the other division. So welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming here today to listen to our presentation. My name is Michael Cross.
I'm Emma Keller.
I'm Brett Dietrich.
I'm Travis Nice.
Allie Shrek.
And David Henderson.
And we were brought here, they were giving us a task to evaluate self-performing the precast for the arches at 7th Street Bridge in Fort Worth, Texas. And we came up with some findings after doing our estimate. We came up with, we had $4.9 million where they had budgeted $6 million, so we were under by $1.1 million. We were also 15 days ahead of schedule at 259 working days. And we will talk more throughout the presentation, our means and methods, and how we're going to do this. And Travis will start off with our formwork selection.
Based upon the quotes we received for the arch formwork, we felt that Aluma Systems provided the most in-depth scope of work for this project. They understood the accuracy that we needed to perform for these arches. They provided an engineering stamp for their formwork design, which reduces liability for our company. Which
Hey guys, I
reduces.
don't want to throw you off your game, but you know we have a company policy regarding safety. And what was that policy we have?
Start every with a safety share.
Why don't you go ahead and do that for us?
Right, you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we were working down in, I guess, Atlanta one day, and we had a problem with dump trucks getting in and out of the airport. We didn't have lighted sticks to guide them because it was night work. We actually had to ask the airport crew if we could borrow some of theirs at one point so we could safely get our trucks in without damaging either the hole we were in and the people around it. And they actually allowed us to do it, and we were able to get ours in the next day, so we didn't have to ask them anymore.
Good. Yeah, so based upon our quote, we determined that Aluma Systems provided the best accurate, in-depth scope of work for this project. They provided an engineering stamp which reduces the liability on our company, which reduces risk for our shareholders. They provided an arch rotation design along with formwork that supported this system, which puts less on the planning stage and the pre-construction side of things. And that reduces the amount of money we're going to be spending on our staff. They also provided detailed drawings on all connection points so it gives us an idea of the amount of labor we need to throw into installing these set of forms. On the operations side of things, the company provided adjustable formwork. This is crucial in this project due to the tolerances given in the scope of work. If it's not within the tolerances, we pretty much have to start over. They provided custom devices for securing embeds. This is another accurate way to control the tolerances of the arch design, as well as the formwork required no additional no additional fabrication in the field. This reduces labor rates immensely and overall cost of field work that required to construct the forms. And with that being said, Aluma understands that accuracy is the name of the game for this project, so that is why we chose them for the arch form work. Now, Emma will talk more about the timeline of the project.
So we've given you a realistic and accelerated schedule. We started with this accelerated schedule from the beginning before you sent out the information about coming in before the deadline. So we will cast 2 arches at a time and then move them, but before we do any of that, we have to set up the site. We will do the B-set foundations, which includes the foundations below the rails. And then we will set the V-set equipment and then replace the casting pads. Once that is done, we can start actually casting arches. We'll start with setting up the formwork. So 2 sets of formwork, 1 on either side, and we'll go from there. After the formwork set up, we will put the work platform in place and then start putting in rebar, PT duct, embeds, bulkheads, and lighting to make sure that it's all prepped and ready for the pour. At this time, we'll be ready for the pour. We've allowed for a 3-day window so that if there's any weather concerns or a bad batch of concrete, we can ship to the next day. It kind of gives us some flexibility with that pour, especially since how much tolerances there are that has to go into this project. In the winter months, we will be pouring during the day, and in the summer months, we'll be pouring at night. We have looked at this Class H concrete and how we need to deal with it in these conditions. For the winter, we will provide blankets, and in the summer, we will chill the aggregate and chill the water, and we can provide ice if needed. So once the pour is done, we will go into making sure that it cured to that 60,000 PSI to be flipped, and that will happen within 10 days. But before that, we will talk about loosening the forms at 3 days to allow extra moisture into it. Once the forms are stripped, we will go into the installing strain gauges, any testing that needs to be done, PT stage 1, punch list, and final Q&C. And then we will start the process to flip the arch, which will be using this V-set equipment. It'll roll over it, roll over above it, and we will put in the lifting frame, and then it will flip from horizontal to vertical, and then move it onto supports, and on those supports it'll slide back into its storage location. It cannot slide back though until that V-set is moved. So the way we have it set up is we will lift arch 1, move and slide arch 1, and at the same time we are sliding arch 1, we will lift arch 2 and then slide arch 2. Once that's completed, we can start working on the other arches and can keep going in this sequence throughout the project. I'm going to turn over to Brett. He's going to go into more detail about the actual pouring of the concrete.
As Emma said, we will begin with the casting slabs. Once they are put into place, we will start by placing the base form, which will stay there for the duration of the project. Once we have the base form set, we will put in all other forms and have them fastened up. Once we get everything ready for pour, we will begin pouring at the knuckle. Once we finish the knuckle and get to the split of the tie and the rib, we have to maintain an equal pace to prevent any cold joints from coming up. And a cold joint is basically if we have any kind of lapse in them meeting back here at the end knuckle, we're just going to have a vertical joint from where some concrete is already set, it's gotten cold and contracted while the other concrete's coming in. So in order to maintain pace, we have looked at options into speeding up production on the rib side by increasing concrete trucks as well as men. We have a concrete crew going through. Once they get to a safe distance, we have a cure crew coming right behind them to help start that process. Once we finish at the knuckle, we begin by putting on a moisture cure. Oh yeah, sorry, we have 2 pump trucks as well as to make it a continuous pour. Once we get to the moisture cure, we allow for 1,000 compressive strength PSI to reach 1,000 PSI, or before 30 days, we begin loosening the outside forms. As Emma said, prevent any kind of constraining cracking on this concrete. After 96 hours, we remove all PT anchors. And as she said, we will begin by setting these lifting frames in. And when we begin lifting, we have taken into account putting 2 telehandlers in to help keep the everything level as we're lifting it up, along with the lifting frames and the Burke halter, and as well as to make sure it sets on the supports of the railing, be slid evenly. And now Allie will take it over for the safety aspect of this project.
At Sun, as you all know, we are all dedicated to safety. We want to make sure every single one of our employees has the opportunity to go home safe and sound to their family in the same condition that they arrived on site. And the concrete division is no different. As a high-risk project, we are focused essentially on safety. We've combated any risk by developing lifting and erection plans. All 12 arches are critical picks, and therefore we've developed a system to prevent any safety challenges by having only critical personnel on site, as well as developing emergency safety zones should something go wrong. It's a place where our employees can go and we can account for their safety. Additionally, we want to make sure that all our employees are aware of and knowledgeable on concrete safety, avoid concrete burns and any other hazardous exposure that could occur. Working in Texas, it can get really hot during the summer months, so we want to make sure that our employees stay hydrated and make sure our heat stroke and all that is not a complication. Additionally, we are in Tornado Alley, so we want to make sure that that is accounted for in our budget and in our schedule with potential weather. We also have a couple of concrete night pours, so we want to make sure safety is a paramount concern with good lighting. Additionally, some of our material requires some special handling, and we've made sure to take care of such things as stainless steel. With that, I want to turn it over to David for special items.
Now, after spending a relatively generous amount of time on this project, it's evident there's a lot of risk associated. And this can be either a huge disaster for our company or it can be very profitable. So a couple things we need to pay special attention to are the Burkhalter, the damaging of arcs, the tolerances, and any congestion on site. First up, I want to talk about the Burkhalter. And now this is basically a centerpiece of the project and will drive the schedule. If something happens to this machine, if it breaks down, especially after cure time for an arch is completed, we're stopped. We're dead in our tracks. We can't do anything. So to mitigate this, we've allotted some time in the schedule to ensure that this machine is upkept and it's not going to break down. And if it does, on the off chance, we're able to fix it without effectively changing the schedule. We're also going to talk about the damaging of the arcs. And this is controlled with two major factors, and that's the control we have when lifting and rotating these arcs, as well as the tolerances. And if we break one of these, it's on us. It's coming out of our pocket. If we scratch it, if we bust it, if we crack it, that's it. We have to be very careful in our movement of these arcs, and that's thankfully due to the Burkhalter, we're able to do so. Now, when rotating and lifting these arcs, we're going to have a lifting frame and the 4 points of lift that the Burkhalter allows, and this will create complete control and will prevent any cracks or swaying of the arcs. And we have complete precision of where they're going and when they're going. And we're also, as Emma said, we're going to slide them into place into stockpile. So they'll be sliding at a pace we decide instead of opting for a crane where we could sway and maybe crack or hit something. Now, as I said, another way to avoid any problems is our tolerances. That's a huge obstacle on this project. They're very low tolerances. That's because these arcs have to be beautiful, they have to match, they have to be consistent, and it takes a lot of time and effort to do so, to keep this consistent. And the number one thing here is survey. And we're going to survey when the formwork goes down, we're going to survey when we put the rebar in, the new embedments, we're going to survey once we pour, and we're going to survey once we loosen the forms, and then we're going to survey one last time before we pick up and rotate these arcs into place. This is an absolute necessity, cost-wise, because if one of these breaks, as I said, it's out of pocket. It's all on us. It's out of tolerance. Then that's us. And finally, congestion. It's a major factor on this site. There are a lot of things going on at once. Particularly when installing the rebar and the embedments. There's going to be many subs on, and we're going to have to stagger these when pertaining to the installation of rebar and embedments, and there has to be constant communication between general contractor, the concrete division, and these other subcontractors on the site. And finally, I'm going to turn it back over to Allie, and she's going to talk about possible methods for transportation to the site.
Just to touch on means and methods a little bit. Our casting yard is located just about a quarter mile away from the 7th Street Bridge. So obviously there are some potential transportation challenges to be addressed. We've decided to combat this by a continued partnership with Burkhalter by using the SPMT, which is a self-propelled modular transporter. Basically, to simplify, it's a piece of equipment designed to take on weight that a typical semi could not, which allows us to transport those 12 arches individually. And it also increases our accuracy because each one of those wheels can be computer steered to increase the accuracy, as well as the load distribution is much more efficient. Obviously, this is a specialty equipment piece, so we want to make sure that additional training for all our employees is provided, again, with essential personnel for such a large task. And it's obviously very important because we want to make sure that those things are bubble wrapped. Additionally, traffic control around this area is essential, as well as civilian safety, because it is a highly congested area and very important. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Michael for some.
As you just heard through the presentation, we feel that our team, through Sunk Concrete Division, that it's in our best interest to self-perform the precast, as you heard through our means and methods. As I'm going to reiterate, we come under budget by $1.1 million, as it was budgeted at $6 million. And we also come under 15 days for the schedule. And we've also evaluated the risk, and we have contingencies in the budget for any failures or any potential problems. And if y'all have any other questions for us, feel free to ask them. Feel free to ask them.
Absolutely, thank you.
Good job. I think you guys were detailed. Have a couple questions about it. So you're going to pour both arches at the same time.
Correct.
What are your form crews going to do while both arches are sitting there after they've been poured?
Form crews will not be working on those days. They will come back on the 3 days to help loosen them, and they will be. We will maintain a foreman and a 5-man crew at all times during the duration of the project as well, in case anything goes wrong. They are there immediately while relief is on the way, if there's something really serious.
Are you carrying the cost of Burkhalter in your number?
We did not. We did not know what that cost was to begin with.
Because they're the ones that will be doing the lifting of the arch and the rotating, but it sounds like you're doing it as well?
We just had it planned out in our schedule because we wanted the whole duration to complete one full arch, including storage and lifting.
Okay.
So we just wanted to know exactly what the process was so I guess we can plan ahead and know what we need to do next.
The only cost in our budget was the actual casting of the arches themselves
Okay.
and
How about the
formation.
When you
Yeah,
chose
foundations.
Aluma for the formwork, that was a purchase,
Correct.
and what was what are you going to do with it when you're done with it?
We can either scrap it, with local scrap yards, it was about 45 cents per pound, which with the quote they received for the amount of pounds, that came out to $262,000, which goes directly to the owner.
It goes to the owner, or are you going to put it into my pocket?
Well, it is the owner's money. He bought the formwork, so it is up to him to decide what he wants to do with that money.
So that value is not accounted, it's not included in your number right
Correct.
now, right?
That as well as the incentive, the bonus incentive by the owner. We kept that left out of the budget.
So that's just hypothetical.
Hypothetical, correct.
Depending on the success of the project, if it's very successful, they could also use it for other implications for bridges as well.
They could say architect.
On your proposal, you have 216 pours.
Correct. We looked at that before we saw the congestion inside of the actual arches with all the embeds. We were planning on having not necessarily a bulkhead, but basically a stopping point so the concrete could get all the way up to its 4.5 feet that's required to do without it just keeps slumping down the rest of the way. But once we took a look at the congestion, we made the change and have changed it to 12 pours. So it's just going to be one continuous pour per arch. And there's no room to put anything in those arches with all the rebar and ductwork and embeds.
So you mean like a bulkhead?
Essentially,
Okay,
correct.
gotcha. You keep mentioning congestion, what's the concern with the congestion?
Well, it's a very tight spaces. There's the, obviously the rebar and the embedments are in, and we have to be very, very careful not to
knock off times.
Not, yeah, exactly.
So you're not gonna talk, but what could happen if you, with that congestion, how can that impact, I guess, what's the fear, besides tolerances? of
Inconsistency
congested
with,
area?
like, when you're placing the concrete or pouring the concrete, have vibrators going down. If you, with all the embedments and all the congestion with the rebar and the PT duct,
Yeah.
it's a fear that you could get air entrained if you don't properly get all your gear in there. And
Bad consolidation.
That, as well as the safety between all three division, or contractors, concrete division and general contractor, working all in that tight space. If it's not staggered by any, or if the schedule's not perfect on where we're gonna be or coordination, then you put in a safety issue as well.
Oh, so you mean congestion not only of the physical
But the
attributes
actual
of
people as
but
well.
the actual work area.
Correct.
Okay. You've mentioned the word tolerant, or embeds a lot, embedded items, David. It's one of your special items. I don't know as much detail about these arches, so what embeds? What are we talking about here? And what's the concern?
The cables that are strung by the hangers have multiple embeds throughout them. So basically, there's grab sleeves, forebacks, as well as hanger sleeves that have to be, or excuse me, hanger tubes that have to be addressed during the pour, so that when we go back to put on the cables and really make it look nice.
Okay. Well, can't you just like cut the spokes to fit or something, or are they?
Not designed. The architect was pretty adamant about that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Correct.
You said you have a cost per arch of $103,000.
That was just the labor to set the forms, pour, and then strip the forms. That does not include the cost of the actual form work, because it wouldn't be consistent to every arch, because you only make that cost. You only have that cost twice.
So what's your formwork cost?
The form work cost was
1.8.
1.8 million?
Correct.
Was that the cheapest formwork cost?
No, we had 6 other formworks that were there, but this was the most consistent as far as meeting the specifications and the tolerances required for the project.
As
Well,
well.
if you're giving it back to the owner, wouldn't it have been better to buy a cheaper one?
Well, the cheaper costs weren't necessarily, they were cheaper when you initially looked at them, but if you dug into the actual quote, it didn't include nearly as much as this one did. So you actually end up with more cost than it looks on paper.
You're going to be spending a lot more time, a lot more labor costs to make sure everything is perfect. And if it's already prefabricated and all you have to do is set the items, the embedded items, it's a lot less work. It may cost more, but you're going to save time and money.
So I'm looking at 3 million in your arches, 300,000 in your margin. Where's the other 1.6?
It's in labor costs. Or wait, what'd you say? Well, you said 3 million in
Your arches,
arches.
the 300 in margin.
We have money set for the foundations as well. Putting those together, which involves excavation for the B set, or excavation for all of them, and then we have pours for all of them, as well as you have form work for the B set from where it goes. It goes about 100 feet, or no, it's about 30 feet of full slab, and then it goes into 3 solid strips, and then it goes back into 1 solid slab.
Then we also have money in for contingency in case one of the arches were to break.
This is a very high-risk job, and we want to make sure we don't break the bank on Sun as a concrete division and as a general contractor.
Typically, when we do jobs, that have a high-risk component, say it's architectural walls with a lot of embeds, we'll sit around and you'll hear everybody say, well, I remember what I did, or I remember when I did that. We don't really have that here, so you don't really have a history to go back and compare it against. What's giving you a comfort level that you're able to produce these arches, which is something we haven't done before when you have nothing compared to?
I think the biggest thing for comfort, I hate to say it, would be the actual formwork, because it does allow for adjustment, and you do have everything there for the embeds. You're not putting up plywood formwork and having to make everything work and tear it all down. You have a greater
Sense of confidence.
you have more confidence with the formwork in a way, because it's
Formwork
prefab.
is engineered out the risk for you?
For the most part, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
You
That's
can't
another reason
eliminate
why we went with
everything.
them.
Especially since they provide an engineering stamp that proved that the engineering formwork would work in this instance.
That's big.
As well as they came up with their own arch rotation design, as well as was the frame hangers that were built into the formwork as well.
Kind of thinking with the end in mind, on
Yes,
just
correct.
one side of the project.
Well, that being said, did you put together your lowest number, or did you put together the right number?
You said probably the right number.
Yeah, I would say the right number. We could have gone with the lowest number and not putting in any contingency or made our profit a little lower, but we felt that was the right way to go about this with all the risks that was involved in it.
We want to make sure we protected Son.
Who's gonna be your, who's your superintendent, your main guy out in the field?
Yeah, I'll let you guys.
That'd be you. You did a very good job with safety. You know, a lot of things there.
After this discussion, you want to change your number at all, or you feel pretty good about it?
Feel pretty good.
What if we told you you're the highest out of everyone?
So,
It's fine.
I feel like we covered everything we needed to cover though.
It's the right number.
You're not.
Anything else? Jesse, anything?
Yeah, you still have some time, so you have questions for us too, and we can go back and forth here. But we want to create a relaxed environment and talk about the job and get a good comfort factor with, you know, with its, I mean, your recommendation, which is great, it's blatantly stated, and you've said it twice. I believe Michael, right? Mike?
Yes, sir.
Is that you're recommending, it's in our best interest to do the work ourselves, and that's what we were looking for. You believe you can do it in the time frame we were given, but it still goes back to that question, is we know we can buy them and make a 5% fee on that contract, right? What is, and you might not have this off the top of your head, but if we can make $300,000 buying them from a precaster, what's the company gonna put in the shareholders' pockets by self-performing this? Ballpark.
Thank you.
So we had a $6 million budget, right?
Correct.
And we were,
You get 5% of that.
All right, so that's 300, that's the 300.
300.15%.
it's too difficult.
You're saving money to the owner,
Yeah.
for one.
You also have if you do save money for the owner, you have the relationship with the owner that you're given as well.
We're in the owner's best
Very
interest to
generous.
save them money as well.
So we could do, you're saying 1.1 under budget, inside that number actually has a $300,000 profit also, and a contingency that you hope you won't have to tap into.
Correct.
So you're telling us that instead of buying them for $300,000 in the pocket, we could do more like 1.5
And
in there.
to add to that, it would be ahead of schedule, which includes that
The incentive.
incentive to do that, which is what we calculate around
I don't know if
$500,000.
you,
about
Did you
$500,000.
tell them what kind of contract we have with the owner?
I don't believe we did. We have a lump sum with the owner to build the march, to do the entire bridge for $24.1 million. So,
Any savings we would keep.
Okay.
And we just saved a significant amount, I think, by doing it this
I'm
way.
concerned about your formwork costs. 'Cause I believe the abstract number was around 720,000. The quote was around 905,
Correct.
and you're at 1.8.
The quote did not include 2 sets of forms from what it made out to be, because it only included one outer formwork, or outer shell formwork. So to be able to do cast 2 of them at the same time, we needed 2 sets of forms.
So the 900,000 number included 2 soffit forms, 2 inside forms, 1 outside, and 1 47-foot tall column form.
Correct.
So you're now saying that the outside forms are another $900.
Essentially. It also gives us the chance if something happens to one of these now as well. If we have an extra set of soffit and like whale and tail forms.
Do you really think we need to spend the extra 900,000, or we can schedule it out so we're going back and forth between the arches and we can actually pick up some time.
Scheduling it out would add, but you would have to stagger it by that 10 days, because that's when you're shipping the form, and that would most likely push you over that 12 months.
Without working around the clock
Yeah, you would
at all
have to.
times.
Is
But again, the 10-day cure, you can't do
is
anything.
going
there.
beyond the 12 months more expensive than 900,000?
We were not given a penalty fee, so if there was a fee by the owner, which I'm not sure there is or not, then it could be over.
I believe it's that same incentive, just.
Yeah, we actually
That's what it
assumed that
is.
it was
We weren't sure about
$30,000 a
that.
day
The
when we did
incentive's
the
on
contingency.
It's the overall project. I don't know if that was made specifically clear, but.
Because that would push it by at least,
60 days.
yeah,
So
For
it's
60 days?
a
Well, if we're
month or
doing-
2 months probably.
10 days after, before you can take off the formwork per each arch, so you're adding 60 days.
So
to
the
the
formwork
project.
needs to stay on the arch for it to cure.
It has to, you can loosen it at 4:30 hours, but you can't fully take it off until it's cured, I believe. Or no, it was,
Where we understood it.
no, you can, yeah, because
Yeah, because you're gonna keep it wet.
Yeah.
Okay. Good job, I appreciate it. The confidence is what we were looking for. You defended your position, and that was specifically stated as one of the key points we were looking for, so I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.